Hallucination. Back in the day, Michael was on his probation at the archives office due to his out of temper when hitting the gang son of an upper manager. Every time he got bored, he tried to read through the old cases to do research. Michael was getting interested in an old opened case for years before. That was a murder case. The victims were 7 people in Miller's family. He wanted to follow the case and investigate it out, so he started from the city psychiatric hospital. Based on the records, all 7 members of the Miller family had died in an evening. The only survivor was a 5-year-old kid. That was 13 years after the case happened. After deducing all the files, Michael figured out the son was living at the city psychiatric hospital, so he started from the hospital. He came with one of his colleagues, Mason. Mason asked Michael, "Michael, why did you get interested in this case and want to reinvestigate it?" "I felt this case is a bit weird, so tragic, and still haven't solved yet, so I wanted to give it a try." Michael had asked Mason to come with him to the hospital since Mason had information about the case. Michael had been on his probation, so he was unable to publish his investigation. Michael and his colleague discussed the case. When hearing that was a 13 years ago case, Mason got a bit discouraged. You said this case hasn't solved yet? That is such a long time since then, you know. This is really hard to reopen and investigate it. That must have been a reason to come to a dead end. The police had tried to investigate, but there was no lead. Mason suspected, this is a bit demonic. The whole family had died, and there was only a 5-year-old kid who could make it survive. How the weird comes. Did the family get punishment from God? The 7 members' deaths weren't recorded clearly in the file. It was so confusing. Michael saw his partner started worrying, so he changed the topic. He asked about the alive kid. Does that kid live at the hospital all those years? After a few times of moving from hospital to hospital, he had ended up here. Mason said that the kid had been moved from hospital to hospital, but his health status wasn't improved. The 2 of them came to Owen's room. The only survivor was 18 at that time. Michael looked at him through the glass door. The room wasn't big and very simple. Inside the room, behind the curtain, a skinny teenager was standing and looking out with his sad eyes. Mason had come to see Owen a few times before. The 2 of them stood at the door a while, then pushed and stepped into the room. Mason opened the door and stepped in with a friendly smile on his face. "Hello Owen, you have a visitor." Seeing Michael stepped in, Owen carefully looked at him. At that moment, Michael could see the teenager's face clearly. He was 18 but looked like he was in his 30s, his face was full of worries. After recognizing Mason, Owen gave them a sign to keep silent. "Keep quiet. They're coming to get me. Owen said that someone came to catch him, then hide under the bed in panic. He's always like that. Every time he went nuts, he hides under the bed and thinks that someone is chasing after him." Mason explained to Michael. Every time the boy was gone nuts, he got panic and started trash talking. Michael walked towards the bed and bent down. He lifted the bedsheet and eyed inside. He saw Owen was kneeling down on the floor, shaking and frightening. There was a fire candle in front of him. That was absolutely the teenager's familiar hidden place. But even he was hiding under the bed, he still got frightened. Michael tried to calm him down. "Don't scare. I'm the police. I'm trying to protect you." Owen looked at Michael timidly. Michael and Mason had to convince him for a long while to pull him out of his hidden place. After Owen went out, he sat on the bed with his arms clasping his knees silently. He was still terrified. Michael faltered and asked him, "Owen, could you please tell me what happened to your family when you was 5? Owen gazed at Michael without a word. Mason interrupted, "Come in Owen, in front of you, that man. Michael. He is not only a cop catching bad people, he is also able to catch ghost or demon. Mason tried to help. Listening to all of that, Owen started to come to Michael and begged him, "Please help me to catch those ghosts." Michael assured Owen he could help. "All right, young man, you don't have to be scared. Let's slowly tell me what happened. I'll find the way to help you." Owen backed to the bed and backed to the same sad pose as before. He tried to pull himself together and started to remember the horrendous tragedy 13 years ago. Owen told them, "I have lived in a happy family, surrounded by lots of people, my grandpa, grandma, my family, my uncle's family. Everyone lived in the house together. That particular day, my dad went to the market very soon in the morning and backed home very late in the evening. I had waited for him in the front yard. My mom was very happy when seeing my dad and told me, 'Son, Dad is home.' I ran toward my dad since I knew that my dad would buy me lots of good food. 'Dad, what do you buy me today?' Me dad gave me a light smile as always. He stepped into the house and put everything on the table. There were candies, peaches, candles, and calicos. Accepted foods and household stuff. The most interesting to my family was the white candles on the table. My grandma was filled with light when seeing the white candles and talked to my grandpa, 'Old man, this is the wax to light up. Which is everyone talking about?' Oh gosh, I could see it with my own eyes today. It must cost tons of money. At that time, everyone used oil lamps to light up. Candles were very expensive and strange. Very few people used candles at night. My grandma condemned my dad since it was expensive but still happily wanted to try. My grandpa was also delightful and insisted my dad light up those candles. 'Quick, light those candles up so that everyone could see.' My dad fired them up, and those candles had been lighted up shortly in everyone's excitement. Right after the candles were lighted up, the whole house was lighting up. It was a very cozy and warm atmosphere. Our house is really lighting up. This thing is better than oil lamp. My grandma looked all over the house excitedly and told us. And so, the whole family gathered around those candles. We ate the foods that my dad bought. That was simple but very happy to me. After chatting a while, suddenly, my dad had a headache. Ouch, why I got a headache? He went to the kitchen to get some water. I gotta have a cup of water. Oh, my dear, eat slowly, or else you gotta choke of food, my grandpa reminded me. There was no one noticed about my dad's headache. Everyone thought that was normal since my dad had been outside a whole day long. In the middle of that warm and happy atmosphere, the tragedy had begun. I had witnessed with my own eyes. My dad had backed from the kitchen. He held a big knife and cut down my grandpa's head all of a sudden. The knife cut took my grandpa's life right away. I was unable to forget that horrible evening. Blood was everywhere. Everyone was in shock. No one could take a reaction. Everything happened so fast. My grandpa had died in front of us. My grandma was terrified. She screamed aloud and asked my dad, "Oh my God. Son, what wrong with you?" My dad was acting weird. He looked around. I could see he was unconscious through his face. He talked some weird stuff. "Ghost. You are all ghosts, come to harm my family. I have to kill all of you. I gotta kill all of you." He yelled out and plunged into my grandma. My grandma's legs were unable to function like a normal person due to her senior problems, so she could not run nor resisted my dad. She had also got the knife chop. My mom was so scared at that moment, but she tried her best to cradle me and ran out of the house. After chopping my grandma's head, my dad turned to me and my mom, who was trying to run away. He wasn't him anymore. He completely outed of his mind, like he was possessed by a ghost. He held the bloody knife in his hand and stared at us. I was just a little kid back then. I was too scared. All I could think of was held my mom tightly and looked at my dad. I could see there was a ghost behind him clearly by my own eyes. It took my dad's hands, that ghost had controlled him. My dad and the ghost came closer to us. My mom held me tightly and continued to run off. Once we reached the doorsteps, we saw my uncle's family. There were my uncle, his wife, and their little kid. They just got back home. Seeing my mom was frightened and in such a hurry, they asked, "Hey, what happened? Why are you so frightened? Where are you and your son going to?" They saw my mom was covered with blood. They couldn't understand what happened. My mom gasped and replied them, "Run. Run quickly. Your brother is insane." At that time, my dad reached the doorsteps already. My uncle and his wife wanted to ask more, but it was too late. My dad gave my uncle a cut on his neck. My mom continued to hold me tightly and ran toward the gate. Behind us, I could hear my aunt and her little child screaming bitterly. My dad had chopped them off as well. After slaughtering my uncle's family, my dad didn't want to stop there. He ran after my mom and me. My mom was so exhausted then, she just a weak woman. She knew she couldn't make it alive, so she had sacrificed for me. My dad attacked her in the back with the knife. She screamed aloud painfully. She fell to the ground, but she used her one last breath to push me out of the gate. She shouted at me, "Run, as far as you can, honey." And then she closed the door in desperation in front of me. Owen cried his eyes out then. He said that the last time he saw his parents were before the gate was closed. His dad was knife up and tended to kill his mom. Even though that was 13 years ago, but those terrifying memories always made him lashed out in fear. He was just a little kid back then, so he had been obsessed with his horrible past. "Ghost, there was a ghost behind all of that," Owen said. At that moment, Michael didn't know what to say to comfort the young man. He spoke up, "It's gonna be fine. I'll help you to catch the ghost." Michael and Mason gave Owen a goodbye and left his room. Mason asked, "Are you gonna catch the ghost for real?" "That is just psychopath, kiddo. How could we find a lead? Furthermore, all of the family had died. How do you investigate this case?" Then Mason convinced Michael to let the case go as is, "Buddy. This case is unable to be solved. You and I better go for some beers." But Michael didn't want to give up on the case, and he was likely to be more determined. "Nope. I'm not gonna give up on this case. I'll start from their house." Michael wanted to go see the Miller family's house. When hearing that, Mason swung his mood. After years, the house became an abandoned house. No one would have a gut to step their foot inside. People said it was a haunted house. Are you crazy? That house is haunted. No one comes any close to it. After a bunch of attempts to stop Michael, Mason was unable to change his freaky mind. Finally, Mason had to give Michael the Miller family's address. "Okay. Wait a minute, I'll tell you where the haunted house is." The case was stuck on Michael's head. He could not get away from that and wanted to find the truth behind it. He came to the old house. After 13 years, there was indeed no one there. He slashed the spotlight and pushed the door, which was covered by spider webs. The yard had been covered by grass. There was an unpleasant smell of decomposed garbages. Looking at the scene, he was a bit hesitant. He was afraid that would no lead for him in that kind of scene. Since he already got there, Michael decided to step into the house to check out. He put his feet in with his flashlight. The house had been abandoned in years. Garbage was scattered all over the ground. Michael tried to check everything carefully under the dim flashlight. All of a sudden, his flashlight was blinked 2 times, then the light off. He felt weird. He had carefully changed new batteries before heading out. How came it lighted off like that? He had nothing to light up. He drowned to a silent, dark night. Out of the blue, a wild cat meowed outside, in the front yard. Michael got a bit scared at that moment. Michael remembered he got some matches in the pocket. He quickly took it out and fired a matchstick up. Even though that was a little fire on the match, Michael felt it much better than before at that moment. A match wasn't last long. Michael fired the other 2 matches and still found nothing in the house. Right after he tried to fire the 4th match, he saw a haft of the candlestick on the ground. He was filled with hope. He lighted up the candle, held it in his hand, and continued to step further to the house. He watched every detail in the house, an old-fashioned house, nothing valuable, it seemed. Right after he tended to leave the house, he could sense a cold breeze behind him. There was someone behind him likely. Michael wasn't aware of that until he was too cold and turned his head around. Behind him were the spirits of Owen's grandpa and grandma, who had died years ago. Aware that the danger might come, as usual, Michael touched his belt to take the gun out. But the gun was not there. He was wearing his plainclothes. He didn't bring the gun with him. How carelessness. Michael ran out and saw the other 2 spirits. As the file he had read, he could recognize Owen's parents. And then, there was a family. The parents hold the little kids also appeared. Those spirits came close toward Michael. Even though Michael was a grave man, he had experienced lots of difficult and strange cases. He didn't know what he should do at that moment. To be honest, he could face up murderers, gangsters, or wild beasts, but not ghosts or spirits. Those scary ghosts come closer and closer to Michael. Every ghost stepped toward to grab him. They all wanted to choke his neck. Michael was in a panic, so he was completely taken over by those ghosts. They wanted to tear him in pieces in their resentments over those years. Being choked by those ghosts, Michael got frightened, and eventually, the candle in Michael's hand fell off. It rolled out then lighted off. Michael tried his best to escape from those ghosts, but he fell down and got numb. After a few minutes, his eyesight got blurry, and he felt that the Grim Reaper nearly came to take him away. He was unable to stand anymore. He fell off, and his feet unconsciously stepped back. That step back saved him. Fortunately, he stepped back and stepped in a nail. The pain of stepping in a nail helped him sober. The ghosts had disappeared. There was just Michael in the dark and the middle of an abandoned house. Michael tried to pull himself together. He looked around and confirmed that he was still in the house and there was no ghost in the house. Michael limped out of the weird house. He didn't find any leads. Michael had deduced and put everything together. He suspected the white candle. He brought the white candle to 703 Institutes to ask for Professor Williams' help. That was indeed the problem. Hey, Michael, guess what is it inside the candle? There is a very strong hallucinated property inside it, such a surprise. So everything is clear now. The father had breathed in that kind of property. He got headaches at first, and then he got hallucination. He thought everyone in his family was ghosts and murdered all of them. The tragedy had started because of those candles. That was such a shame. After those years, there was no way to find out where those candles from. As a result, there was no way to find who was the culprit for all of that. Thank you, Professor. I am going to go to the hospital. Michael got something on his head and saw the professor off. He came to see Owen. Michael took out the white candle under Owen's bed and assured Owen there would be no more ghosts appear in front of him. Owen surprised. Really, you have caught those ghosts already? Yup, I have caught those ghosts. From now on, they would not come to find you anymore. Owen gave him a happy smile after hearing those words. He barely got excited as a teenager at his age like that before. Could you please tell me more detail about your father went to the market part? Michael asked. Owen said that his father had gone to the market very early. I'm not sure, but I think he left the house from 2 or 3 a.m. He told us that he had to go to the market early so that he could buy the good stuff. Through Owen's words, Michael guessed that the place the father had gone to that day was not a regular market. That must be a black market where had sold the unknown source stuff. Those white candles must be bought there with a great deal. But then those kinds of the market had been banned and cancelled throughout the country. Michael saw Owen off and left his room. He probably would live his normal life later and get away from the hallucinations. Right after stepping out of the room, Michael heard someone calling him, "Michael officer." A middle-aged man came to see Michael and introduced him as an orphanage's director. "Michael officer, I have heard about you. I'm an orphanage's director. Could you help me to find a missing kid? This is a very weird case." "All right, I'll take the case," Michael replied, and so he started a new case at the orphanage. What happened next at the orphanage? Stay tuned for our next video.